this concept of how do you convince, it's obviously a trick, right?
Yeah.
How do you convince someone to take a better path? It's a trick topic because it's a natural thing most people are looking to do. But the way you do it is actually using the sales and marketing kind of fundamentals and principles, which is why they're good skills for life. And then if you learn them through business or work, then you'll also be better at that too, but then you'll be better at life, which is why I always find that so funny. Like, it's people don't think about it. It is exactly a sales process. It is exactly. And what you do whenever I deal with someone who, if they cold call me, reach out to me, they're trying to promote something, and I go, sorry, person, this is not for me. When they just accept that and then just have a like, okay, yep, no problem. How's your day going? Or whatever, they take it somewhere else. It actually makes them more attractive. I think it's because they validate that they're listening to me. And then that sends the signal to me that, oh yeah, this person listens, which not everyone listens. So that immediately sets them apart. And then in a way, I've almost developed a relationship with them on that basis. So if I was ever ready for it, I know that that person's like not pushy. They're not trying to get me to do things on their timeline. They're willing to like consider my best interests, not just what they need to do, which is sell and make a quota. And then when I'm ready later, I'll probably go to them.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest distinction I've made as I've sort of tried to get better at that sort of process is ask yourself the question, are you genuinely trying to help are you trying to help that person are you trying to help them solve a problem? Do they have something specific that you can help them with? Can you benefit? Can you make their life better? All those sort of questions come up. And if you genuinely come from that frame of reference that whatever you're quote unquote selling is going to actually lead them towards their own goals or just help them make life better, solve a problem.
That's actually the place to start. And am I genuinely willing to give people help? Like, what was the question? You had a great one there. They'll all be in the transcript. I wrote it down. It was, are you trying to help that person solve their problem? Are you genuinely trying to do that? And take this and apply it more broadly to like education and careers. So a lot of people like me have made the mistake that I critiqued in great depth in 18 and Lost, which is that this is what's best for you conversation. And in education, if you're a teacher and you're in school, you're in classrooms, or if you're helping people make life and career decisions and you're being their soundboard, I think that so often you come from a place of trying to rewrite your own story or fulfill your own story rather than, so that's the parent who never made it, who wants their children to achieve their dreams for them, who supposes, their kind of their hang-ups and insecurities onto someone else. A lot of the time, the example that might be, pardon me, more relatable to the listeners, the example I'm talking about trying to give opportunities to your friends and, this would be good for you to do. Why don't you ever do this stuff? It's more intentional. Why don't you listen to whatever, Joe Weeby podcast or Luke's podcast or Driven Young or read more books or, read Anthony DeMello or do retreats or mindfulness or meditation or these are a lot of things, right, that you'd probably try and promote or read sales books. But we a lot of time we do the same thing that, but just by way less severity that a lot of people like who try to fit their worldview onto people do. And it is actually the process of fitting your worldview onto people. And I can probably return here to the ideal I hold of the doorman, which is my role as the doorman is not to force you through a door. Imagine that. Imagine I was trying to shove everyone into whatever intentionality, being proactive and innovative and self-interested. What would that look like? If you drag someone in, you scare the shit out of them, they probably want to leave. So they're probably not going to stay anyway. And even if they're in there, they're not going to make the most of it. My role is to make the door clear to you, to reveal it. And also to go, Luke, do you know what's behind this door? Like, you think about this podcast with Dom. Do you know that you would develop these benefits too? By mounting the upside, it makes it even more attractive. And that's part of my job because I've seen the other side of that door is to clarify and communicate to you. You're standing over at this point in front of it. I'm looking behind it and I'm going, is that clear, mate? Like, just making sure that's clear. And here it is, and it's packaged up for you in a way that is appealing to you. And that's what sales, I think, is you can apply the doorman concept to it. It's in making it inviting and also presenting it in a way that makes sense to them. But the goal is not to just get them through. I think the goal is, if this is a great thing for them and they can recognize that from their perspective, then here. And I think in its ultimate sense, if you're able to interpret who people are on a deep level and understand, this is part of, I try to do this to the best of my ability with the whole audience of none, interest mapping, or the introspection tools we use to try and see someone for who they really are. We talked about a couple episodes ago how they often don't see it. They don't see the highest version of themselves. In many situations I do. In many situations, people listening and people like you, Luke, will be in the same position. And to kind of, because of that gap between who they see and what you see, to try and do them the amazing service of leading them on that journey that is actually the best expression of themselves. Not what you think it is, but your interpretation. So try and come up with a specific example here. So Luke, for example, let's talk about you. Like I could say, I think Luke could be an incredible whatever tech startup guy, and then I could invest in his company and he'd do all the work. So let's try and trick him to starting a tech startup, right? And yeah, hang on a minute. And then that's good for me. I get to boast that I catalyzed that and all this sort of stuff, right? That's a way I could approach the world. Or, looking at you, I don't really think that's you at this point in time anyway. And I think you're in a great place right now with the work you do. I think also that there's this potential. I think you have this great probably panache for probably things like podcasting and interviewing people, because of your natural curiosity and the questions you naturally ask, audience of none, without thinking about it, just wanting to scratch your own itch of interest. So it means you'll do it. You've been doing it for a long time because I've known you for a long time, so you'll do it for a long time in the future. But you, like you said and admitted a couple episodes ago, hadn't thought of yourself in that way. You hadn't recognized that was probably a gift you had that you could take further. And you're very comfortable where you're at. You're spending more time doing, say, something like learning more about the networking part of your business, which is like what you're interested in. So when I look at you and I see that picture, I say, all right, he's in a great place where he's at, so that shouldn't change. So he's not someone I'm like, working on whatever tech projects with or whatever else with, but there's this podcast thing. So like, how could I support that? And then it's like, well, yeah, definitely egg you on and clarify the doors behind doing what you already started doing again at step Y. Like you've already started playing around with the podcast format with Dom, right? And so doing that, and then, it'd be fucking useful to me if you help me with my podcast. Yeah. So there's a good example too. And that's not taking away from the other things that you focus on as well, because we do this in a very efficient way. And then probably I'd say another thing is also not pushing you and Dom to be Joe Rogan or anything. Like be really aggressive, growth strategy for the podcast, yada, yada, because that's like, oh, mate, this is the roadmap you could do. Like we could do something like that. I'm sure I'd have good thoughts on that. But that's also not where you're at. You also said a couple of weeks ago, yeah, it's a bit of fun. And thought, how fucking good's that? So I think that's just, I wanted to give an example that would probably tie up all those loose ends. Yeah. And that is probably an example. Like there are a million things I could try and push on people. Not saying I maybe haven't done it in instances, but the incentive alignment has to be their story. Looking at their story. How do I help them write their story? Not how do I get this person to be a character in my story?